Hi, everyone. My name is Minh, and you're going to learn about integrating Wikidata with OpenStreetMap today. As a Wikimedian who's also an OpenStreetMapper, I believe in the importance of bringing the two projects closer together. And if you were at the previous talk in this room, you can probably hear some enthusiasm among others as well. So I hope that's something that a lot of us here at this conference are sharing. This is an extended version of the talk that I gave a few weeks ago at Wiki Conference North America, so there's some overlap. But I'll probably be ending a little bit short so that folks can ask questions. I know this is a new topic for a lot of people. OSM is a wiki world map. Like Wikimedia's projects, OSM is ambitious in its scope and radical in its openness to volunteer contributions and the reusability of its data. But if you dive into raw OSM data for the first time, your first reaction is likely to be colorful. The data is amazingly uneven. For example, here are all the different ways that people have referred to the United States Postal Service in OSM. OSM is built on a folksonomy of tags, kind of like media wiki categories or Wikidata items about classes and subclasses. And unlike Wikidata and its property proposal process, OSM has no formal enforceable process for introducing new, potentially conflicting tagging schemes. Any mapper can unilaterally coin any key or value. Here are all the most common ways of tagging palm trees. And there's actually some more beyond that. The data is chaotic, but the most important thing is that we're collecting it. One approach to rationalizing these tags is the OpenStreetMap. Yep. Oh, okay. Let me try it again. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, please let me know right away if you see that again.
Okay, you're back.
Okay. So one approach to rationalizing the many tags in OpenStreetMap is the OpenStreetMap Wiki, a sprawling media wiki-based documentation site. It contains a lot of information, but it's rather poorly organized over the years, so it's not a great resource for the many, many mappers who are coming to the project for the first time. There are multiple efforts at wrangling OSM's data and the tagging conventions into something more machine-readable. The OSM Wiki maintains a wiki-based instance as a machine-readable representation of the human-readable prose in the main documentation. So this is separate from Wikidata, but it's using the same software. Another effort at improving the consistency of OSM tagging is the name suggestion index. It's a catalog of brands and organizations that have standardized tag presets in OSM. So when you map something in OpenStreetMap, these presets make it easy for you to use the standardized tags. You still have the freedom to coin custom tags, for example, for things that you've encountered that nobody else has before. But the presets are much more convenient, so they allow the community to come to a consensus about how to tag something and implement that decision. Presets are available in a number of languages, so you can participate in the project no matter which language you speak. When you click on one of the I buttons, you get documentation in your language drawn from OSM Wikibase. Under the hood, each preset in the name suggestion index comes with a set of raw tags, including machine-readable Wikidata QIDs. On Wikidata, the brand has statements about many aspects of the brand that would never be considered germane to OSM, such as the transliterations of the bank's name into Arabic and Chinese, the headquarters location, the founder's name, the social media account names, and even technical information like Swift codes. So what's the point of tagging OSM features with Wikidata QIDs? It's all about being able to analyze OSM data and with federated queries, aka crosswalks. Please excuse the pun. I had to fit this image in somehow. This is Sofox, a fork of Wikidata query service that Yuri Ostrakhan set up. You can use the Sparkle query language to query both.
All right. Stop it again.
Okay. Sorry for the technical issues, everyone. So this is Sofox here, and if you're familiar with the Wikidata query service, it looks similar. It uses the same language, the Sparkle language, but this can query OSM and Wikidata at the same time. So this instance loads data from OSM and OSM Wikibase. And then Wikidata query service, or Wikidata itself, rather, is one step away using a service call. The query you just saw plots brands by the number of Twitter subscribers along the x-axis and the number of store locations along the y-axis. You can see Starbucks standing out on Twitter and McDonald's standing out on OSM. And here's a different view of the same data, the logos of these brands. Binary queries are about much more than branding, though. Here's one of my favorites. It's a leaderboard of the most commonly mapped flags in OSM, color-coded by what the flag represents. How else would you quantify the prevalence of a given flag on flagpoles worldwide? Currently, the US is on top, followed by the Philippines and Ohio. This is just the stuff we've mapped so far. And there's a long tail of obscure flags, like the Bourbon Royal Standard, and common ones that we haven't mapped enough of yet, like LGBT pride flags and McDonald's flags. Here's something very different, a bubble chart of route colors for bus routes and rail routes. You can see that the most common colors are tagged with, you can see that most routes are tagged with the most common colors. But mappers have branched out and tagged very specific shades of red, blue, and green, etc. And federated queries aren't just for our visual enjoyment. Here's a map of the United States showing memorials and other namesakes of notable Confederates, slave traders, segregationists, and other racist figures in history. The memorials and their locations come from OSM, but the namesakes' identities come from Wikidata. Not all of these things are even notable enough for Wikidata. This includes small town streets, shops, and even named rooms inside buildings. On the positive side, here's a map of memorials and namesakes of Black human rights activists and abolitionists. Both maps are incomplete, but they're growing more complete over time. On their own, maps like these don't affect any change on the ground, but people on the ground can use them to raise awareness about local issues and change narratives. For example, a Belgian initiative called Equal Street Names systematically tagged every street in Brussels with its namesake and created a Wikidata item for each namesake, making it possible to visualize the distribution of street names by gender. In a second phase, the initiative is organizing workshops to provide city councils with actionable information about street renaming opportunities. So if you saw a talk earlier today about the representation of gender minorities in Wikidata, the efforts around that can have a positive impact on OpenStreetMap as well. Open Historical Map, a sister project of OSM, integrates even more directly with Wikidata to provide Wikipedia article previews as context when browsing a historical world map. Among other things, OHM is working to increase representation of indigenous cultures in time periods that have traditionally been depicted from a colonial lens on maps. So seen here is the Comancheria, a territory that was occupied by the indigenous group, the Comanche. And on most maps, this was traditionally represented as just the claimed areas by whites. This is only the beginning. We need your help. The OSM Wikidata Matcher is a tool that detects Wikidata items that don't link to OSM features and vice versa. This is a great way to get started, especially if you're already familiar with Wikidata. And if you dig deeper, there are even more opportunities to link Wikidata and OSM together. Wikidata has properties to link items to various projects in the OSM ecosystem, including OSM Wikibase, the Name Suggestion Index, and Open Historical Map. In the other direction, OSM has many keys to express more tangential relationships to Wikidata items. For example, a specific tree or flagpole may not be notable enough for Wikidata, but it is notable enough for OSM. So you can tag a tree with its species, or a flagpole with the flag design that flies on it, using these Wikidata keys. Here are links to the sites I showcased earlier in this talk, along with a wiki page containing all the SOFOX queries and places to discuss Wikidata OSM integration with the OpenStreetMap community. Thank you. And again, apologies for the technical issues with the screen sharing. So So I think we have some time for questions. Actually, quite a bit of time for questions, and I'll just look quickly at let's see. Yeah. So please feel free to turn on your mic. If you haven't, if you joined as listen only, you'll need to change it to sharing your microphone. And yeah, happy to answer any questions you might have or thoughts, suggestions.
Thanks for a great talk. What is the main challenges that you would like to address now from a Wikidata perspective?
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest challenge over the years has actually been to find some of these, you know, quote unquote killer apps for OSM Wikidata integration. There's been a lot of skepticism of Wikidata within the OpenStreetMap community, and vice versa. Also, I would say as well among some Wikimedians, there's been, or Wikipedians, I should say, there's been skepticism of OSM, and I think a lot of that comes from just an unfamiliarity with what this, you know, what the other project does and its processes. But to really show the promise of this kind of integration, you know, I showed off a couple of very small examples around namesakes of roads and that sort of thing. But this is just scratching the surface. So you know, we've been building out the you know, all this tagging for years now. But I think it's really a great opportunity for software developers, as well as just people who are interested in coming up with Sparkle queries and stuff to really show what kinds of questions can be answered using this data. I hope that answers your question.
This is Susanna. I have been involved in Open Historical Map earlier, and I would like to know, how do you see what would be the steps, how to maybe bring historical geographic data in connection with Wikidata? Maybe like specifically bridging Open Historical Map and Wikidata.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, this is a really, I would say, new area of, for both open mapping and Wikidata in terms of how we're going to represent historical geography. And there's a lot of unsolved questions. I know some of the big challenges, technical challenges facing the Open Historical Map project right now. One is how to represent time. And I think this is a challenge that Wikidata also faces in terms of, sorry about that notification there. This is a challenge that Wikidata also faces in terms of how to represent uncertainty in time, and there's ongoing discussions about that. Also, about if you're familiar with the ship of Theseus, like what if you consider the border of a country, the border of a country changes, can change over time, and then the country can change names over time, and who it represents changes over time. How many different distinct features are we going to represent in the database for Open Historical Map, and how do we link all those things together to which items in Wikidata? Because Wikidata also has sort of a many-to-many relationship. So those are some of the challenges there, but also a lot of promise, because this is infrastructure that has been built up over the years for data about the present, and now we're only getting a chance to think about how we can apply it to many different time frames in the past. Thanks for the question. It looks like was Quellet had a question, I think.
I think Mr. Kellett joined in the chat with no microphone. So
okay.
if he wants to speak, he has to reload, I guess.
I think he's here, or she, I don't know, I'm sorry. Tried to open the camera, but then didn't. Qids, if you want to write your question, and then maybe someone wants to jump in.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question related to Soulfox. I think that being able to connect to Sparkle simultaneously to OpenStreetMap and Wikidata is really wonderful. However, I wonder whether Soulfox is actually being updated, because I think it has data are rather old. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, I skipped over a slide that's a little bit pessimistic, because right now Soulfox is actually not in great shape. It was, let's say, a year ago, but right now it's been it's going through some challenges in terms of, I think there's some bugs around not returning all the data, and we're trying to figure out why that is. And I think, like a lot of sort of these third-party projects in whether it's OpenStreetMap ecosystem or the Wikimedia ecosystem, there's always a need for more reliable infrastructure. And so this, so Soulfox it's currently running on Google Cloud. It's working functionally in sort of, as in you can access it and make queries, but it would be really great if there were, if anyone knows of other ways to host it that might be more reliable, and possibly give it the kind of resources it needs to update more regularly.
Yeah. So or either we just can use Python and use any packages that can connect easily to OpenStreetMap and Wikidata. So perhaps just using a straightforward Python would be just enough. Yeah.
There's definitely, it's not, there's definitely ways beyond Soulfox to use both data sets at the same time. And in fact, I think that Equal Street Names project uses custom processing, not Soulfox. So that's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Qids. Celio has a question. I can read it to you, Minh. He says, I believe that the development of the OSM editor called ID has a great importance for Wikidata integration with OSM. Nowadays, ID is able to automatically suggest a lot of information about brands of companies, commerce, government organizations, and when this data is validated by a human, ID edits integrates data from Wikidata as well. It's not actually a question, but maybe you want to comment this?
Yeah. That's a great point. And so I touched on the name suggestion index, for example. That is the project that powers all those Wikidata-based suggestions in ID. So when you go to edit, and you can add a point to the map and say it's a cafe, or you can type in Starbucks and it'll know what Starbucks is and show the logo and everything, and it will add all the details about Starbucks that might be expected there, like it has a drive-through or something like that. So that's a way to, I mean, it's certainly not just for like multinational organizations. I mean, this can be for very, very local things as well. So that's a powerful integration, and it's an open source project also. So you can actually go into the name suggestion index and add chains and local power companies and everything that you're familiar with locally, and that will benefit people in your area who are mapping in OpenStreetMap. Thanks for the question.
People in the chat are really asking for a great WikidataCon OSM integration datathon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think a datathon would be pretty awesome, and I love to think about like how we can organize this with the community, with both communities. So I'm up for suggestions here, because I'm familiar with organizing mapathons in the OSM community, but not as familiar with what it takes to do this, especially with a worldwide community for Wikidata.
So I think we have a plan here.
Yeah.
Jason is also talking a lot in the chat. Jason, do you want to jump in and say about what you're sharing, maybe? Let me see if he answers me.
I see a question about whether there are SOFOX examples available. Yes, I dropped a link here about this is a pretty comprehensive page, I'd say, of Sparkle examples that have been developed so far for SOFOX. These are also accessible in SOFOX itself, just like Wikidata Query Service has the examples button. SOFOX does too, and they all they all kind of run in a reasonable amount of time. So you can get a sense of what's possible, as well as some very basic examples.
Great. Thank you, Minh. Do you want to have any other questions? I think we can wrap up. Otherwise.
Well, thanks everyone for taking the time to attend this talk and asking great questions. Yeah, if I have some links to places where you can discuss this integration more if you're interested in the last slide of my talk. I'm also going to post this talk to Commons. So take a look at the Etherpad, and I'll be posting those things.
Okay, can you share them on the Etherpad?
Yes, I will. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Minh, for your interesting and amazing talk.
Thank you, and thank you for moderating.